The Peel Art Gallery, Museum and Archives, also known as PAMA, is pleased to partner with Caribbean Art Fair, Black Artist Network and Dialogue, and guest curators Karen Carter and Greg Manuel to present When Night Stirred at Sea, Contemporary Caribbean Art. This exhibit aims to connect Caribbean artists to the broader art world and includes local and international talent, including Brampton's own Janice Reed. The exhibit begins on October 29th virtually and eventually on-site once PAMA reopens to the public. For more information, please visit pama.peelregion.ca.
You are listening to New Theory Radio.
Hello and welcome to New Theory Radio, the show where we theorize on arts and pop culture. My name is Nav Nanwa, I'm your host, and we're coming to you live here on Saga 960 AM. New Theory Radio is presented by PAMA, the Peel Art Gallery, Museum and Archives. Happy November, as there's 2 months left in 2020, and you're probably thinking, thank God. But I'm excited for what's happening in a few days from now, and that is the coveted Mississauga Music Awards, which is presented by the City of Mississauga, Living Arts Center, and the Canadian Community Arts Initiative. The award celebrates the very best in music when it comes to Saga, and this year it'll be presented virtually on Saturday, November 7th at 7 p.m. So this week's show welcomes a few people that are actually involved in this year's ceremonies to talk about not only the awards, but a few other music-centric topics that popped up this week. I have first joining me a mainstay within the music scene here in Peel. He is the owner of Anti-Skeptic Entertainment. He has led countless marketing and promotions campaigns for music, film, and bands. Some of the artists that he's worked with include Alexis on Fire, the Arkells, Bush, Cancer Bats, City and Color, Danko Jones, and Dolly Parton. I had no idea you worked with Dolly Parton. That's awesome. He also launched the not-for-profit Mississauga Music and is also the lead singer and songwriter in the hard rock band Maybe May. In addition, he's also passionate about seafood, so I thought I'd throw that in there as well. Right. It is a good friend of the show, Demetrius Nath. Demetrius, great to talk to you again.
Thanks for having me on here again, Nav.
Anytime. In addition, we have two amazing artists that are going to be popping on the show as well as a part of our panel today. We have Ontario-born artist who has been developing her songwriting skills for over 15 years, compiling a 600-song repertoire of her own works. With a background in classical piano and voice, she experiments with rich harmonies and cinematic sounds within her music and creates catchy melodies that are difficult to pinpoint to a specific genre. Her multi-genre debut, actually EP Aura, was released on October 16, 2020, featuring 5 tracks that showcase her various strengths as an artist. It is Mississauga Music Awards nominee Dani Kristina. Dani, thanks so much for coming on NTR.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me.
And last but not least, joining us from the band, the Darenots, who are a skillfully band that combines the best of hip-hop, reggae, trap, and rock with earworm hooks. They are the genre-busting sound of the city, and they produce an unrivaled live experience which marries contagious melodies with body-blasting rhythm. Another Mississauga Music Awards nominee, Andrew Reed. Andrew, do you prefer Andrew, Drew, or Rev? What do you want to be called on the show?
You can call me Rev.
Rev? Okay, cool. So I'll redo that intro later.
No, it's all good. I forgot I didn't even give you a breakdown. I'm like, man, Dani is so much better than me.
It's okay. I ended up creeping you on Spotify, so I just took what I could. I also may have creeped your Facebook to grab your promo photo, but that's fine.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. It's for creeping.
But I want to thank all three of you for joining me. And obviously, it's an interesting time. As of this recording, we are approaching one of the most important elections in our lifetime, and it's not even for our country. And no, I don't want to talk about politics on this show, but I do want to talk about music usage. And one of the things that really stuck with me throughout this entire big election that's happening in the U.S. is that Donald Trump has been using songs at many of his rallies in which the artists behind those songs don't want him to use it because they don't want to be associated with his cause. And it got me thinking about the challenges that artists may face when it comes to things like this, when it comes to you releasing your work and it being used probably in a manner that you're probably not fond of. And I'd love to have a conversation here because I know, Demetrius, you're someone that's worked behind the scenes a lot with artists and have probably been involved in different conversations when it comes to music licensing and just even where it gets played. And I know both Rev, you and Dani have experience, obviously, with your plethora of work when it comes to your discographies and all the music you guys have put together. I'm sure there's been instances where you've lent music out for different causes. But I'd love to get your thoughts on this, and maybe Rev, we'll begin with you. What's your overall thoughts when it comes to music usage, and do you really feel like artists are truly in control right now?
Well, when it comes to music usage, I think it comes to a two-pronged approach. Because one, like when you do art, let's say the Mona Lisa or something abstract like Picasso, you might have something in your head that you want to depict, but everybody else who goes and sees your painting is going to interpret it differently. Mm-hmm. That's same with a poem, that's same for any art. So essentially, once you write the song, write the music, and put it out there, it's no longer, for lack of a better term, it's no longer yours in terms to be, in terms of how it gets depicted out into the public. Now, when it comes to being used for something specifically and for somebody else to gain off of your works, right? Like say you're gonna do a crisscross jump, and dating myself, but
okay. We all know that song.
A jump rope company or a weed company wants to use Snoop Dogg songs, right? Like once you are profiting off of somebody's thing, like Donald Trump in the election, like if he uses some progressive, liberal people to kind of, skew his message, he's going to be profiting from that. So I do think that artists should have a little control on how their art gets used, but we have zero control on how it gets interpreted.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Dani, do you feel similarly to Rev?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think as artists, obviously we're always creating stuff and it's not always direct in its message. So people can always kind of take what they want from what we're putting out there. I do think though, especially when it comes to kind of someone licensing your music or using it, putting moral rights into a contract might be a good idea. That way you can kind of have some control whether your music's going to be used for things that you believe in or not, especially in 2020. Artists are pretty involved just throughout the world politically. They all have very specific stances. So when we're talking about like how music would be used in politics that way, I think everyone has a pretty good idea where a lot of musicians specifically stand on certain topics. It is, I think, a dangerous kind of road as well because it draws the line whether art is just expression or whether art serves a deeper purpose. That's something obviously that comes up during that whole conversation. But I do think that, especially at least for me, I'm a big environmentalist. I'm a minimalist, like I'm really into that. I would definitely feel very affected if my music was used to be counter to my core beliefs. But I'm not really sure what we should really be doing now as artists to protect ourselves and our beliefs when we're putting out art into the world. Yeah,
that's actually a fair call. It's similar to what Rev had said as well, is sometimes when you just kind of put it out and you want people to hear it and it's on a one of these platforms like a Spotify, or even you put it on YouTube, the control really does disappear at times, and you could hear your song pop up somewhere without you even knowing, whether it's even like a TikTok video as an example, right? And people upload their music on TikTok, but they're not really understanding what it's probably being used for. Demetrius, you have played many different roles kind of behind the scenes when it comes to getting artists play on the radio or getting their music featured in different mediums. I'm wondering, what is the level of risk when it comes to these platforms, and is there is there ever a challenge when it comes to ensuring a song? Because I find it that there's a challenge in regards to credibility versus profit, like being able to put a song in a placement in a commercial as an example, and that struggle between, I guess, creative freedom versus, hey, you're going to get paid money to do this. What are your thoughts on that? Have you ever dealt with a situation like that with some of the artists that you worked with?
Well, generally speaking, I think when it comes to music and politics, we've seen some of the bigger artists over decades. Names like Bob Marley come to mind, Public Enemy, Rage Against the Machine. Right, these are artists that have had a very strong stance on their political beliefs, right, and who they support and what they don't support, that kind of stuff. And in many ways, it's a part of their identity, and it's a part of their marketing and their branding, and it brings them street cred, right? Yeah. So it makes them unique and makes them stand out, and overall, it's a part of their branding. And sometimes, sometimes that could go in a negative way. I remember Dixie Chicks and George Bush, right?
Yeah.
That didn't go so well for them. And then I remember, I don't know if you guys remember this band called Three Doors Down.
Yeah.
From the late 90s, I believe.
They played Trump's inauguration, I think.
Right. And you know what? That's a band that I used to listen to like as a teenager and had no idea even if they were around anymore. And then, they just said yes to a gig, and then the whole world was talking about them, right, again. So sometimes it could be spun into a good thing. But I mean, these are some artists that are established and have been around for, years and decades. But I think as an indie artist, I'm going to be the sellout, and I'm going to say that, you know what? If tomorrow Trump were to use my song on my band's song on something, and as a result, people were talking about who this artist is and where they're from and looking us up online, what have you, right? Then I think it would be, the saying, like, any press is good press. I would start there, and then I would decide how to spin it. And then I would go, oh, I don't agree with Trump, and here is why. Or I would just ride off of the, the success that it brings me or the attention that it brings my band, right? So I think with politics and music, as artists who are marketing themselves, they always try and, take advantage of trending topics, whether it be a dance trend on TikTok or whether it be like Flashback Friday hashtag, you should look for things that are trending and people are into in any given moment or any given time to try and use that as a tool to bring people back to your music. And if politics is it right now, then play that to your advantage. And if, especially as an independent artist that nobody knows about, if somehow somebody on Trump's camp goes, that's a cool song to put behind this, and as a result there's backlash or curiosity or positive attention, then you can figure out what to do with it, whether you want to be like, oh, I hate Trump, or no, he's lowering my taxes, whatever. But at the end of the day, you'll bring people to your music, and then they can interpret it however they choose.
Yeah, that's a very and that's a great point you bring, because there are a lot of artists that just want their music heard, and any way that happens, the goal is once I get it heard, I'm going to try to ride that wave. And to your point, either figure out if I'm going to fully associate or use this as an opportunity to showcase more of what I can do.
Yeah.
Rev, did you want to add to any of that?
No, well, essentially it's like going back to like what you're saying in terms of like what's the fine balance between I guess selling out and being true to yourself. That's just the noise that the haters are going to try to make. Like, I guess an example, like Michelangelo, when he painted the 16th Chapel, it's like that wasn't a passion project. He was hired to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like he got paid to do that. Mm-hmm. So that was, like if Nissan is going to hire me to write Nissan words and lyrics, I'm going to put that as a testament to my talent. And, just because you do music doesn't mean that you have to, that you say no to people giving you money.
Yeah.
But going back to the Donald Trump example, just like what Demetrius said, like there's no such thing as bad publicity. Mm-hmm. I forget which band it was like recently they went up on stage at one of his rallies and started dancing, and that's all I heard about online. This group of like this boy, I don't know if you guys know who it is or whatever. But
it does sound familiar, yeah.
Yeah, it was like 2 days ago. They got on stage with him and they just started jamming. And
I feel like they're Canadian as well.
Right? That'd be super weird. But yeah, just echoing Dimitri's point. No publicity, bad publicity.
You see that picture of Lil Wayne and Trump?
Yeah.
But it's so funny, but with a photo like that, like I'm sure Lil Wayne's music streams are up. Like I'm sure there's people that are fans of Trump that are probably like, oh, I never heard of this Lil Wayne guy, and all of a sudden, it's not like Lil Wayne needs it. He's Lil Wayne, but he's probably trending on iTunes or even Spotify as we speak because of that. Yeah. Like it's such an interesting game. This is more of a question for Dani and Rev. Have you ever been in a situation, and it doesn't have to be like this level, but in any situation in the past, and Dani, maybe we'll begin with you, where your music was used in a way that you weren't too fond of? You don't have to get into specifics, but I'm curious as to how, if that did happen, how did you deal with it?
Yeah, so far so good. I've been pretty okay with.
You've been very protective.
Yes, I've always kind of been protective about my music, but I must say, like even going back to like the no publicity is bad publicity thing, I think in today's day and age, especially with more my generation, I'd say, is cancel culture is a really, really big thing, right? So it's kind of like this fine line whether like, yeah, this might be a good opportunity for my music, but also if you do this, like people will dig up the receipts like 5-10 years down the road, and then that's like a skeleton in your closet if it's something that's totally against what you end up building your brand around as an artist. So I think that's something that people have to be careful of, especially now. Like you go on Twitter every day, there's a new person that, they've found something out about, and everyone's like, stop streaming them, boycott this band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm grateful that so far I haven't had to deal with something that's so divisive as politics or something when it comes to my music. I'm grateful for that. I've kind of been able to make my own choices. But I do actively seek out opportunities where my music can serve a purpose that I believe in, such as environmentalism. I've written a lot of songs about the environment and just kind of preserving it. And for me, that's a really important cause. So in that way, I'm seeking out opportunities for my music to be used in ways that it might not have been initially intended to when I first wrote music. But so far, so good. No negative kind of ways that my music's been used where I wouldn't be happy with it. So I'm really grateful.
I feel like Danny's going to do like an audio search later just to make sure. Rev, what about you?
No, but honestly, just to touch on Dani's point, that was a great point when she said, like you write stuff that you want to portray, right? Like you do songs about the environment and whatnot, and me, I do songs about social justice and whatever, things that that's my form of, I guess, protest and giving back and making sure my songs get used the right way. If like an oil company isn't going to be using any of Dani's environmental songs, right? So that's a good way to ensure that. But I would say, just to answer your original question, have I ever dealt with that? No. And I would love to deal with that. So if anyone wants to take my music and spread it around, get me 1 million streams and we'll work it out later. But no, straight up, like, a lot of people, I see people talking about like, oh, I don't want to sample this or whatever because I'm going to get sued or this, that. And I'm like, bro, if you're big enough that, Diplo hears your song and decides to sue you, well, then you're going to give him half of whatever, half of $1,500,000, like you're still on top. So it's like, right now at the level I'm at, you know what, it's the music's just out there. I just want everyone to take it and enjoy it. There's so many ways to make money, so you're never going to plug all the holes in terms of people like streaming this and taking money there and that, so I'm a little more lenient with that kind of stuff, but don't tell the rest of the band that or else they'd probably kill me.
Yeah, we're not recording this, don't worry, but
okay, yeah.
But yeah, like I think that's a great sort of point to kind of conclude this conversation is as musicians, as artists, as creators, you're never going to really understand the feelings or the viewpoints of your fans, right? Like a fan might be into your music, but they may not be an environmentalist. They actually might be quite the opposite, right? Or to your point, Rev, about social justice, you might have people that have differing opinions towards some of the things that are going on, but enjoy a Darenots record. And again, I think that just makes this entire situation even more interesting. Is I think once something does happen where, again, there's publicity around a song that you put out and someone's using it in a way, or the person using it you don't necessarily align with, I think it will sort of show people just a different side of music usage and just how crucial it can be.
Also, just to jump in, it's like, if I did, like Danny was saying, like, you know, if we wrote something for a specific thing, like, you know, stopping world hunger, and then, you know, I saw a company like Monsanto or, you know, like taking over and using it for the opposite, that would honestly infuriate me, because when it comes to music, a lot of times things just flow and the concept kind of grows as you're writing the song. But if you, it's a different process when you are purposely creating this and you want this point to be made, and then it gets skewed, you almost feel betrayed.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. The best example I think I could think of, just that's a legendary one, is when Michael Jackson bought the Beatles catalog and then sold Nike the song Revolution. To sell sneakers. Oh man. Just to close this conversation out, and Demetrius, maybe we'll get you to chime in. Like, is there a way that artists can get more control in the future, or do you think this is just something that's just going to happen and artists just have to roll with it?
Oh man. Well, I'm in the business side of things as well as an artist. So speaking from a business side of things, I think if you are signed to working with labels, managers, publishers, their goal is to make money for you and themselves.
Yeah.
And they will try to, for lack of a better term, exploit your music and give it exposure in as many ways as possible to get revenue for everybody involved, right? So when you're working with all of these other companies and all of these other entities, I think you end up giving up more and more control, right? On the other hand, as an independent artist, if you are writing for a specific reasons, for a specific cause, if you stand up for something that, you know, you want full control of, then you don't have to, you know, sign on the dotted line. If you want to keep control, right? I mean, at this day and age, you can pretty much do everything on your own. But, you know, the big bad record labels, you do need them if you want to get to a certain level. And the way you can get to a certain level is if bigger money is involved and it's a part of a bigger cycle. So at the end of the day, it comes down to you. If you are happy with playing the local bars and venues and, you know, getting your message and point across, and retaining all your rights and all your credibility, then more power to you. However, if you do want to, you know, tour the world with Lady Gaga, you probably can't do that on your own. You need a lot of people working with and for you, and all of them have to put foot on their tables. And so,
can I add something to that?
Involved. Sorry, please. Go ahead.
Well, I just, what you're saying is so true. It's almost like a sandwich approach. Like in the beginning, you have to do your own thing, or else you're not going to get noticed. No one's going to care about you.
Right.
And once you get to the point where people are noticing you and labels want to mess with you, then you kind of got to cater to what they want, or else they're not going to push you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's like in the beginning, it's all you. And then in the middle, they want you to kind of cater to what they want to kind of give you a sound, more radio friendly, blah, blah, blah. And then you get to the point where you have the fans now. And then now you're at the top. And then now you can go back to doing whatever you want.
Yeah.
Because the labels really don't matter. You have the fans already and they love you for what you do. And you don't have to listen to them because you have the pull. So it's almost like a sandwich approach. You're doing what you want at the bottom and at the top. But in the middle, you kind of got to play ball.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And when you're at the top again, you can, you know, I don't know, like the Rage Against the Machines and the 30 Seconds to Mars, you know, you can say F you to this and that and call everybody out. and then that's your shtick, you know?
Yeah.
So it's, it's confusing.
But no, I think both are fair points. Like, I think this is definitely gonna be something to watch, especially now when you see artists that are taking more control of their own releases now, and the fact that record labels are taking more and more of a different approach, and some artists not even needing record labels, like they're just self-releasing their stuff because they really know how to monetize their followings, just how this evolves. And I guess the gist of it is maybe find a good lawyer, right?
Yeah, or actually, you know, I would say, as an artist, just know what your goals are and what your idea of success is. Because, you know, with that very example, like me with my band as an independent artist, we do whatever we want, you know, we release whenever we want, we say whatever we want in our songs, all of those things. And then me on the business side of things, like you were saying, Rev, like when somebody approaches me for radio promotion and then I sit with the song for days and I go back to them and I say, well, you know what? I need you to cut down the solo in half and give me a radio edit and turn up the vocals, because if you're paying me to get this song on The Edge or Chum FM or whatever, I know what they want. So just like that layered approach, like, you know, you can do whatever you want, but if you want to play ball with Chorus Entertainment and, you know, and at the end of the day see thousands in royalty checks, you have to play ball.
Yeah.
And there's a middle ground. It's not like you're just saying, okay, you gotta, like, you know, you gotta now do kids songs or something like that.
I mean, I think it's like extremes, but it's not. Yeah, it doesn't have to be extremes. I mean, you know, going back to Il Scarlet and Heaters, right? It was on The Edge just like you guys wrote it, right? But I mean, it doesn't always apply.
That's suave.
Right. But I worked on that song, so that's why I'm bringing up that example.
Well, inside baseball, I love it.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Awesome.
Shout out to Il Scarlet, Mississauga crew.
Yeah, Il Scarlet represent.
The New Theory Radio. You are listening to New Theory Radio.
Radio here on News Talk Saga 960 AM, presented by PAMA, the Peel Art Gallery, Museum, and Archives. Switching gears now, there was an interesting article that popped up on Rolling Stone this week, and it was titled, "Who Listens to Albums Anymore?" And it dives deep into the listening behavior on streaming platforms when it comes to songs versus whole albums. And it also got me thinking about the creative process. And I love to pick actually all three of your brains on this, because all three of you are artists, including you, Demetrius, but maybe May. How could this potentially change the way that you guys put projects together? And Danny, let's begin with you. You know, a couple weeks ago, you just put out Aura. It's an EP, and EPs for me, especially when I every Friday I have this ritual where I turn on my Apple Music and I just go on a download spree and see what's out. I've noticed that a lot more artists are putting out EPs, and it seems like it's becoming a norm. So I'm curious, and again, you don't have to get too deep into your creative process, but what went into this thinking? And was this intentional, or was this just based on the creative direction that you had when it came to the project?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. Today's society is very much instant gratification. People need to hear it right away. They're like, oh, what's next? What's next? Because you're constantly being stimulated. You have Instagram where you can scroll, find new content all the time. Social media, I think, is to blame for a big part of that. But I think that because of this whole like instant gratification, people want something new, something fresh all the time. Songs themselves have, number one, become shorter because people only want to listen for a certain amount of time. There's songs like before, you know, you could get away with like a 4-minute song, and now you're back to like 2.5, 3, which of course for radio makes sense. But in the age of streaming, I think that's kind of interesting. And then I think, like, I personally am a big person that listens to an album start to finish. I think the track listing is very important. That just might be me loving vinyl and being super old school. But I think there's something to say, like, artists still put work into their track listing. For me, I spent like a whole few days just deciding, okay, this song comes first just for the narrative to make sense. But I'm not sure if everyone listens to albums that way anymore, unfortunately, because you're trying to get on playlists. So only like one song is going on there. Or same with radio, I guess, like that's one song going out there to the public. And then people come back to the album. And now, though, it's so much easier to just click shuffle by accident. Yeah. And then the whole track listing, if you listen to the album out of order, it's like, oh, well, yeah, just click shuffle. For me, that's like a big no. I always listen to albums in order just because I think it's important, like I said. But I think that in this age of streaming, people are more concerned with what's new, what's fresh, what's the next track. Even though they do enjoy the track while it's out, I think there's a lot of pressure on artists to keep being innovative, keep being creative. Like, they don't want to make the same music twice, more so than before. I'd say before, like, you'd have your audience, you know, you make your music and people just enjoy it, right? But there's so many people that are actively pushing out music because it's so easy. Like you said, you can do it all yourself now. Mm-hmm. And I think because of that, there's extra pressure on artists to kind of stay on the cutting edge, because it's so much easier now than ever before to be releasing music, promoting your own music, and the industry is constantly changing. So the way we're listening, the way we're releasing, all of it is kind of morphing into something, and I'm actually really interested to see where this is all going to be in the next 5 to 10 years as well.
Yeah, exactly. Rev, you guys did the same in 2018 with the Darenots release. Was the thinking similar?
Oh, it was very similar. Yeah. We know that there's a changing of the tide, and it just makes more sense to release single songs instead of full albums. Mm-hmm. You know, back in the, when there was no streaming and it was just like radio and, TV, the industry can sort of control the culture. And when there was a hit song, there was a hit song, and then everybody was kind of dancing to that song. Yeah. We all kind of, bonded to that. And then once it got away from the radio and you could, have your own playlist, I realized that I was only I kind of regressed a bit musically because I was only listening to, my favorite 25 songs, and there was no point or time for anything new. Now, when it comes to things like TikTok and Instagram, they are infusing that music back in the culture like the radio did. Like before, you listened to radio, everyone got that one track, and that's the culture. Yeah. Right? Like now you listen to, I don't know if you're on TikTok or anything like that, but like Jason Derulo, that song.
Yeah, the one that everyone was dancing to, like this.
Yeah, yeah.
Savage Love or something.
Very talented guy. I don't know if that song blows up as big as it does if it's not for TikTok.
Yeah.
Right? So the same thing with the radio, how, they can get a song and blow it up that's, just for repetition. You're like, okay, yeah, it grew on me now. When, just like Danny was saying, you're not giving a song 2 plays. You're not giving a song a play and a half to grow on you. There's no such thing as grow on you. Right? So wow. I found myself of literally turning off my Spotify and turning on, the radio, Sirius, satellite, just to kind of, reshuffle my own brain and kind of just get some new outside influence, because I can find I just turn into an island when I just listen to my own playlist.
It's fascinating. Like as we're recording this, spoiler alert, we're recording this on Halloween, but it is the 20th anniversary of Outkast's Stankonia album, which was like a classic. And it got me thinking about 20 years from now, like are we going to look back on any of the albums that came out this year as classics, considering this new behavior and the way that we take in music, or are we just going to have more so appreciation of songs as we kind of move forward into history? Like that's what I'm thinking about it as a music fan.
I think it's obviously songs. I mean, me personally, I don't know what the rest of you guys think, but back in the day, I would listen to an album and I would like, best case scenario, I'd like 75, 80% of it.
Yeah.
And there are going to be songs you don't like, period.
Yeah.
Some of those songs, like I was saying before, you grow into, but yeah, that doesn't really happen anymore. So.
Demetrius, with the way that you've done promotions for artists, you've obviously been very song first in regards to getting an airplay. Just a couple of questions come to mind. Are you now like, when you work with artists, do you pitch to playlists now? Like when it comes to like different streaming platforms, and like how does the album sort of come into play when you pitch a song? Like if you're pitching a song or a single off of a new album, do any of these outlets typically care about the album, or is it more so the song that takes precedence?
Well, with the album, I know that a lot of people in press still care about albums and they want the full story and when everything's going to be released.
Mm-hmm.
It's better when it comes to press, print, blogs, if you do have an album. I know in many parts of Europe, you need an album or like EP in the least to do stuff. But for radio, obviously, doesn't matter. They don't really care about your album. They just want to know that you have a few singles that are awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Playlists too, right? Pitching playlists is still a bit of I don't know, a Wild West out there. And I mean, I personally don't offer that service. And I've read many things about how it's a bit of a scam.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. So honestly, as an artist myself, I've released 3 EPs and 3 singles over the last, 7 years. But when it comes to, I guess, the general public, you have to keep in mind that we are all, music connoisseurs and we're artists, right?
Yeah.
That's what we want to do for a living, and we write and we create and we talk about. But there are way more people out there that are not wired like us. The doctors, the engineers, the lawyers, the sports fans. I mean, even though there is, do you know what I mean? Like, they don't necessarily think of music the way we do, the way we will create.
Like pop, you would say, like general population.
General population, yeah. Like Danny was talking about the track listing, and like I remember the same thing. I'm like, well, does this good songs to start with? Is it too,
you kind of want to tell a story and have a flow. I understand.
Yeah, it's got to have a flow, and then I'm like, but lyrically, it doesn't make sense, right? And it's like, how many people that are not artistic and musical and worry about lyrics? How many of those people are thinking that way? And we're a fraction compared to that. So that's why I think, at the end of the day, like it is a singles market right now. And I mean, for me personally, I mean, I bought CDs for the longest time. I think I only stopped buying CDs like 3 years ago, only because of access, right?
Yeah.
Only because, I mean, I would walk into HMV. Right now, I have a hard time finding a Sunrise. But for me, listening right now has become a hybrid because I just don't listen to the singles and I don't listen to the full albums anymore. I will, and then I'll save my favorite songs, right? I remember back in the day when I was burning all my CDs onto my iTunes, I would leave out, like Rev, you said, there's a good chance you're like 70 to 80%. And so, I'm listening to the 1975 album and I'm like, this is so good, but I can do without those 2 songs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find that, for myself, it's a bit of a hybrid where as a music fan, I am, I want to listen to the whole thing and give the artist a chance. But then I do end up liking maybe 70, 80%. But, if you were to take that a step further and look at the general public, they're probably like the 1, 2, maybe 3 songs, and that's what they're going to listen to.
Yeah.
So, like you have to think about who you're catering to. Like and that's why, everybody has the single that they do the video for, because that's, and we all do that, in this chat, and we'll continue to do the single for the masses. And then there are the other tracks that, maybe we sung better on, or maybe it's a better song, better played song, one that's closer to our hearts, but those won't get the same amount of attention, but they're in the album still, or the EP still. So you have to, I think as artists, we have to do both. We can't just go singles, that's it, because we want to be TikTok famous, or we can't keep putting out, 12-song double CD albums because we are artists. There's no point. You're wasting your money. Manufacturer's not going to fund it.
As a music fan, it's so intimidating now, and we've talked about this a lot on New Theory Radio, regarding how streaming enables artists to put out 25-song albums, right? And they just and to me, that's always intimidating as a fan, because I'm more of a quality over quantity guy. Like I rather if I see the album's 9 tracks, I'm like, okay, these 9 tracks, like, I'm going to give them all a fair listen, because chances are, like, these are the best 9 tracks that this artist has selected, or you hope that's the case. But I love to get, like, across the board, like, in this day and age, like, what is the optimal track length of an album, if that even exists? And Reb, let's ask you, what is that for you?
It changed a lot. I mean, just like what Danny was saying, I mean, songs used to be 4 or 5 minutes. I mean, just look up like Bohemian Rhapsody and how long that stuff is, right? Yeah. They're going to think about doing that. But I'd say like 2 minutes and 30 seconds, 3 minutes max. I mean, I still make songs that spill over 3 minutes just because there's just too much, lack for a better term, love that you want to put in the song. Emotions, more story that you want to put on the song. It's like writing a novel and you have 3 novels and you got to edit it down to 1, Yeah. So very often we find ourselves coming up with songs that are about 4 minutes long, and we got to go back and cut that up to about under 3 minutes.
Just a follow-up, what is like an optimal, how many tracks do you think should be on an album in this day and age?
Oh, man. Well, I mean, again, it's just all anecdotal. It's all me. So it's not anything set in stone, but I would say what we work on is around 7 to 8 songs. Because we like to do it, and that's I guess more EP range, but the distinction between album and EP isn't really number of tracks, it's the length of time. Right? So you could have, it could always be under an album, but that's what I feel. You just keep putting those out, and then as you put out like a song every like month or so, every 2 months or so, that gives you the full year of that album essentially. Every 2 months putting out a song, and then you're right back into the cycle next time. So you can come into a nice routine if you do it like that.
And maybe this is a question for Danny, and being that you just came off of the release of your new EP. One of the interesting rollouts I saw over the last few years was, I think, John Mayer's last album. He had 12 songs, but he released like 4 songs each month, and then at the end of the 3 months, it was the full album. Have you ever thought about considering attention spans and some of the things you mentioned earlier, and actually this could pertain to anybody, but Danny, let's get your thoughts on it. Rollout strategy in regards to how you want your music to come out, and is Aura eventually a part of a bigger project, or is Aura kind of on its own and you're going to work on something else after?
Yeah, I think that strategy that John Mayer used is definitely a good way to appeal to the kind of that short attention span, like I mentioned, while still kind of giving people who are album listeners the album experience, putting it all into one big project. For me, Aura is a standalone project. I just really wanted to have an EP out that kind of introduced me to everybody. It's just thematically pretty cohesive and kind of shows my different experiments with different genres. But I would say, like, for me, I personally love when, I'd say, like, bigger artists, because it's harder for small artists, it's expensive to make an album, let's be honest. I like when bigger artists have, like, longer albums, because especially when you're waiting, for, like, a year or 2 for someone to release music, when they come out with a bunch all at once, I'm like, yes, awesome, I've been listening for, like, 2 months, you know what I mean? And then I really get to understand the message and the story they're trying to get across, because, I mean, yes, we all tell our own stories in a single song, but like I said, I'm a big album listener, so seeing it as the whole arc and seeing the whole narrative be expanded throughout like 12 to sometimes 18 songs on an album, I think that's really, really interesting to see the different ways that they play with the themes and the different ways that the sonic material also just kind of contributes. And I love when albums are like very cohesive aesthetically and sonically. Just when they sound, you hear a song, you're like, yes, this is from Taylor Swift, Red. I can tell just by what's going on with the instrumental and the lyrics too. So for me, it's like, I think that I personally right now just released a standalone project, but going forward, the new music I'm working on, it's going to be more kind of single-based, I think, just because of the way the market is right now. But I definitely do want to come out with another album soon. Because I have such a large repertoire of songs, it's hard to choose. I'm like,
600.
to come out with. Yeah, it's hard. I'm like emotionally tied to all of them, so it's tough to.
Listening to New Theory Radio.
Falling down, looking around, the cold ground seems further away. And I know not to flow, not agree to let it go. You led me to a place where I was trapped. Then you said you would always have my back. Then you went and left me. Then you went and dropped me, baby. Now I see how much I really mean to you.
You are listening to New Theory Radio here on Newstalk Saga 960 AM, presented by PAMA, the Pure Art Gallery, Museum, and Archives. Just to kind of close the show out, I mentioned during the beginning of the show that the 4th annual Mississauga Music Awards, 4th annual, right, Demetrius?
Correct.
It was 4, yeah, 2017 we were at my favorite bar.
Yes, 17. Yeah.
Yes, the 4th annual Mississauga Music Awards is this Saturday, November 7th. It is virtual this year, obviously, because of what's going on in the world, and it's streaming live at MississaugaMusic.com. Demetrius, just to follow up on the album question, album of the year is obviously a category within the Mississauga Music Awards. Based on these new trends, does that ever change anything when it comes to what is an album and if it can qualify, or do you just, if someone says, hey, this is an album, you just kind of treat it fairly with everything else?
It's a great question, actually.
Because I'm curious.
That is a great question.
It wasn't on my list.
Funny you mention it, because when we sat down with everything we had, we were like, wait a minute, these are all EPs. And so, I think we're just considering anything 5 songs and up as an album, right? I think Factor, considers it 6 songs. Mm-hmm. Like it has to be a minimum 6 tracks, and then of course there's a length of overall time as well. So I think.
Just to ask you a question, did they actually change that? Did they change that in the Factor thing, like in the actual real world? Did they change the number to adjust?
I think it's 6.
6 songs. Okay, sorry to interrupt. Continue.
Yeah. Last time I checked, it was 6. And so, but then some of the albums for consideration were 5 songs. We're like, what do we do? Yeah. So we have it as 5. And then, anything lower, I don't know, like what's a 4-song release called? A sampler? I don't know.
Yeah. Mixtape,
yeah. Mixtape, yeah. So, and in addition, there were very few in our wavelength.
Oh, okay.
Because there are some categories that are very stacked, and we had to narrow down the nominees from like 30 that were on our list. And, it took like an hour for one category, but then there were some that they were like, oh, we got to narrow down from 8 to 4. It's not a big deal. So, and album of the year might have been one of them.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. What's been the process like to put the show together?
Oh, man. Well, in the beginning of the year, when, when everything hit the fan and everything was getting canceled, I think my position was that, well, that just means that we're not going to do the awards show this year, because to me, a lot of the, like an award show you dress up for.
Yeah.
You walk into, you take pictures with your friends, you have the media wall, you congratulate, you're surprised in the moment, you clap for, there's an experience built around an award ceremony, an award show, which almost sometimes is bigger than the actual, especially in our case, or I would say it's similar to the actual recognition. Mm-hmm. Like, you get recognized, and yes, it goes on your bio, and, you get to brag about it on social media, and there's all of those awesome things, and, notoriety and all that stuff. But the award show itself, it should be live and in person. And so I was like, well, looks like I don't have a lot to do, in the fall. But the board and a bunch of people I consult with, they were like, we can't take a year off, especially because it's our 4th year.
Yeah.
You have to, do something. And I mean, that in addition to the amount of nominees we had, because throughout the year when new stuff come out, and, whether videos or artists or songs, and it's exceptional, we start adding it to our Excel spreadsheet to consider for the next year. And so we were looking at it and we were like, well, all of these, nominees that should be nominated and awarded this year, what's going to happen with them? Are we going to push it back to 2021? Because then 2021 is going to be crazy and we won't be able to, it just doesn't make sense. That's going to be 2 years worth of nominees, and then to bring it down to like 4 or 6, it just wouldn't be fair.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So, the process from there went on to how many people will still support and fund and sponsor the prizing for. And unfortunately, everybody that did, in previous years were still on board this year, because as much as everybody's cutting back, I think a lot of people are still are saving money. Yeah. Because they're not doing as much, right? In terms of sponsorships and things like that. I know, Canadian Music Week, for one, like, they got rid of their office at Square One, and, because they're not getting any revenue coming in from advertising as well as their shows that they run during the week. But in the same time, in the same breath, they, they're not doing a lot of the marketing and, the hotel and stuff like that. So, hopefully it will be enjoyable to watch. It's 50 minutes, and it's, all of you are in it, so all of you better tune in, right? So,
hey, thank you on behalf of the artists for, working hard behind the scenes and making sure that we still even have these. So appreciate it.
Yeah, honestly, this year we were gonna blow it out of the water because we had bigger sponsors, we had more money, and everybody, after the first 2 years, were very excited. And it was going to be a real award show this year, but it's going to be online. It's still a real award show without all the glitz and glamour around it.
Fingers crossed for the 5th year, man. I think that'll be amazing if we can somehow get past this. That for year 5, you blow it out.
That's it.
Instead of an awards there, you can just send us all Uber Eats.
Hey, man, I'm not going to complain.
Put it in the grant application, see what happens.
Uber Eats orders, just like, hey, Rev wants this order from Osmos.
10,000 Uber Eats for all the nominees.
Danny and sorry, I was calling you Andrew. Danny and Rev, how does it feel to be nominated this year for the both of you? And maybe Danny will begin with you.
Yeah, it's so reassuring, and it's a good confidence boost. I'd say that even being nominated, like just having a nomination under your belt, you're like, hey, people are noticing that I'm doing okay at what I'm pursuing, right? It's just reassuring, and it's good to see Mississauga, a city with like so much cultural diversity, like so much arts, like it's crazy. It's really nice to see that support for artists. I think that's really important because as artists, obviously we're always kind of second guessing, like it's nerve-wracking putting your art into the world and seeing what people are going to think, right? You're kind of putting your heart out there. And it's reassuring to be nominated for something that you're, working hard at. That's kind of your life, right? It's a big part of you, and I'm really grateful that Mississauga is one of those cities that's supporting its local artists.
Yeah, exactly. Rev, what about you?
No, just she said everything. It means the world. It doesn't matter whether it's, you know, a Grammy, a Juno, or anything. Like, if you say that you are not totally excited to win this award, then you're just lying and trying to be cool. Like this was, just to be nominated was extremely flattering. We felt amazing. It was a Fan Choice Awards that we and Album of the Year that we got nominated for. So it's just like Danny was saying, it's super validating. We try really hard to make our music, and just like any thing like sports or any other long shot career, you're not really expecting much. So when you do get something like people nominating you out of hundreds or thousands of contestants, it does mean the world. Just saying that you are at least on the right track.
Yeah, exactly.
People like it, you know.
And honestly, I'm Demetrius, I'm glad that you pushed through, man, because I think this year more than ever, I think artists really still need this support and still need this this reminder that they're doing amazing things. So, and hey, I'm grateful I was able to be a part of it again this year. So, hey, big thank you.
Yeah, your face is on the entire thing.
I'm all over it. I'm all over it. Hopefully the viewers don't go down, but
yeah, no, honestly, there is so much talent that came out in the last calendar year, from last September when we did the awards to this year, that it would really be a shame if we just sat this one out. And when you watch it, when you watch the whole thing and see who won and them collecting the awards, I think you'll realize just, oh yeah, like this is important for the city, and just the caliber of talent alone, makes you kind of feel prouder to be from Mississauga.
Exactly. Well, I wanted to thank all three of you for joining me here on New Theory Radio. Best of luck at the Mississauga Music Awards. That's again taking place virtually this year, the 4th annual, MississaugaMusic.com. So streaming at 7 p.m., right, Demetrius?
7 p.m.
And if anybody listening wants to connect with either one of you, what's the best way? Demetrius, will start with you, and then we'll go to Danny and then Rev.
Info at MississaugaMusic.com.
Awesome. Danny, what about you?
I would say hit me up on Instagram at It's Dani Kristina. That's the best way.
Hit her up on the IG. And then Rev, what about you?
Rev, you can hit me up on Instagram as well. The band is just at Darenots, Darenots, and I am Revolutionary. Revolutionary, all the O's are zeros, Don't get tripped up. I don't know why I chose that. It's a very difficult Instagram name, but Revolutionary with zeros, not O's.
Hey, we'll be sure to include that in the podcast description to make it easier for people. Don't worry. But if you want to connect with me, it is at Nav Nanwa on Instagram and Twitter. Connect with New Theory Radio. It's at New Theory Radio across all social platforms. Big shout outs to my little brother, Amit Nanwa, for doing our graphics. You can hit him up at colorblindphotography_, and at Dusty Loops, who's the brains behind our theme song. So go check him out at Dusty Loops across all social platforms. Thank you so much for tuning in this week to New Theory Radio, and you will hear all of us next time. Peace.